Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Abilene People, the podcast here on bigcountryhomepage.com, where we talk to interesting people from right here in the ABI. And we have two of those with us today from CASA. We've had some folks from CASA before, but you look familiar. I think you've been here before.
I have.
Jen, you have not yet been on the podcast, but welcome. Tell us, Jen Lemke and Dana Ward, tell us what you guys do for CASA.
So I am over training, which means I'm responsible for training any of the people coming in to be new advocates and providing continuing education.
So if I want to volunteer, I have to go through some training.
Absolutely.
And you're in charge of that training. Yep. So basically, you're really important.
I mean,
yes,
all of us are important.
She's very important.
Dana, what do you do for CASA?
I do recruitment and community engagement, and I do the onboarding of our volunteers before they do training.
Yeah. And so we have talked previously here in the podcast with CASA folks about how important volunteers are. And I just want to quickly revisit that and then jump right into training. But I want to start with stories because I think there's some really valuable insights to help people understand what goes on with a CASA or a court-appointed special advocate.
Yep.
So, the volunteers are important because we have kids in our community who need somebody to help them when they get caught up in the court system.
Right.
And they get caught up in the court system. Why? Why do kids get in the court system?
I mean, I think locally, one of the big problems that we have is substance abuse or misuse, however you want to phrase that.
By the parents?
Yes, and exposure to that. Domestic violence is definitely a problem. Neglect and abuse of, all sorts. So,
and am I just dreaming, or does it just seem like the older I get, and boy, I set myself up there because I'm getting older. But just more and more we see it's like the norms of our society or the fabric that holds us together is just kind of coming unfrayed. There's so much of that these days. Whatever you just said, there's so much of that these days, and kids get caught up in that.
I think it's much more visible with social media and things like that, filming. I mean, we have cameras in our pockets all the time. And so I do think that it's exposure. We see it more often, but it's always been around for sure.
Yeah, it's true. And I think you're right to bring up social media, which, the promises about digital technology, which is the space we're in right now. We're filming this, shooting this in a digital studio. This is going to be on Big Country Homepage and on other digital platforms, including YouTube. So we're engaging in social media right now, and yet the promises about it haven't always come true. I just remember the old adage that email is going to make our life simpler. Anybody buying that anymore?
Yeah. Constant connection. Yeah, that makes it simple.
Right. Oh, but it's going to be great. It's going to be great. But I do think it complicates the lives of kids on the margins, families on the margins. And you're right. We see people video stuff and put it out there in social media platforms all the time, But like anything, it can be used for good, but it can also really expose some of the challenges we have, some of the stuff. So let's talk about the training that happens and what training needs to happen for a volunteer. But I want to start there by just talking to you guys a little bit. It's my understanding that in training, you talk about some of the stories that are very real life situations that a court-appointed special advocate has encountered or a kid has encountered. Give me one of those, because there's one well-known story in your training about a 911 call. But what's that about?
So it's a 911 call from 1991, which obviously 911 was still up and coming at that point in time. But it's just terrible. It's a 6-year-old girl named Tammy that calls when there's a domestic disturbance occurring in her house between her mom and her stepdad. And he apparently is drunk and he's abusing them. And there's a newborn baby, and she's so terribly scared of what's going to happen to that newborn baby. Stepdad shoves her sister down. She's just screaming and crying, but she's also using these big words that's just like a 6-year-old should not know those words. So, I mean, I have listened to that story so many times, and it just like puts me in like teary-eyed every single time. It's just to hear a 6-year-old having to take on that responsibility and try to protect her family.
And you guys are involved in that kind of situation because it's a real situation. It happens in our community, in our city, and kids need somebody to go to court with them as they go through a process to decide the best place for them to live, the safest place for them to live.
Right. Just best interest is being met. So that's our main role as a guardian ad litem, which is the legal term for a CASA advocate, is to seek out their best interest. And we get to see all of the nitty gritty things that have gone on in that child's life up until that point. And so oftentimes we might be exposed to 911 calls or really heavy material, reading material, where we're kind of just combing through these children's lives and seeing the really difficult stuff.
So if I want to volunteer, I'm going to be trained how to handle stuff like that, stories like that, but how to help. That's the whole point, right?
Right.
So how many hours of training are required for somebody to be a volunteer?
So the initial training itself is a requirement of 30 hours. And we cover, domestic violence. We cover the history of CASA, the role of CASA. We talk a lot about best interest.
And Jen, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just how often does that occur, that 30-hour training? Like once a month or once a quarter? Or?
It starts about every other month. We kind of take a little break at the end of the year because obviously people get busy with the holidays. But we do one in January. We start one in March. We start one in July, September. There's 5.
September's our last one. We do a summer, depending on who would like to become an advocate. Sometimes we have teachers and things, and it's way easier to get to training during the summer, during the day. Yeah. And so we try to make sure that that's available for people once a year. So
what should somebody expect? What's going to be discussed during training? And because like your 911 call, you'll talk about stuff like that. But as you said, you guys are professionals and it's emotional for you.
Absolutely. So one thing, we talk about lots of difficult things, like I was saying, the domestic violence and just trauma in general, mental illness, substance misuse is the way we phrase it now. And it's hard. I'm not going to lie that sometimes they're like, man, like you can just see that stress on our trainees' faces. And I always just say, the reality is whether you're seeing it or not, those kids are living it.
That's happening. Right.
So if you can, just kind of buckle down and support them, jump in and just face it like it's a reality, then you can make a difference. And and we definitely hear stories that the CASA was the one that jumped in and made the difference. And everybody involved is important, of course, but CASA has a unique role.
It does.
Just because, it's the best interest. There's not a legal obligation one way or another to answer questions a specific way. It's, best interest for that child.
Right.
And do they go to court with the child?
Depending on the age of the child and the need for them to be actually in the courtroom is kind of whether or not the child's with them or not. But they do go to every hearing on their case multiple times within the time.
But, you guys work with a lot of agencies. I know you do. Both agencies of the court and nonprofit agencies. I'm sure you have relationships with people in schools and everything. But one agency that comes to mind, and I think we may have broached this in another podcast earlier, Dana, but one agency that comes to mind is like Big Brothers Big Sisters. But CASA's different than that, not necessarily better, but aimed at a bit of a different place. And in that way, maybe looking out for the needs and the best interest of a child in the legal system, right?
Right.
Help describe the difference, because as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, or a youth group, at a church.
Yeah.
It's different than that. You can work with, but it's more than that, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I think it is important to say that some of that same relationship, like big brothers, big sisters, is there. You do build a rapport with the child as a CASA, but yeah, you do end up in there being their voice. And like she mentioned, they don't necessarily even go to the court and speak on their behalf. It's rare for the child to have to testify. So to get to know them, build that rapport, and then speak on behalf of them legally, it's a big responsibility.
For sure. The legal part of it, I think, is one of the most interesting parts, but I think it's also one of the scariest parts for people who are choosing to become an advocate. They wonder, am I capable of doing this work? Oh, this is the guardian ad litem role can be filled by a lawyer or a volunteer. Am I capable of doing this? Do I feel confident enough to do this? And anyone in our community that's willing to stand up and speak for a child is capable of doing this.
And that's what the training is all about, right?
That's exactly what we do.
Yeah. And in addition to the training, every advocate has a supervisor, and the supervisor does attend court with them. And I think that's something that's very reassuring, because court is intimidating for people. So to know that they're not going to be on their own in that setting and have support continually from their supervisor, I think is great.
It's great.
And when you say advocate, you mean CASA trained volunteer.
Absolutely, yes.
And imagine if court's intimidating for a trained volunteer. Imagine a kid.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah.
Or an abused spouse.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yes. Yeah. So, we see all sorts of people come in there.
I had Elena Jeter from Noah Project was in the podcast a couple of months ago, and she was just telling stories. And at one point, I just said, what the heck is wrong with men? And I didn't use the word heck, but I guess I'll rephrase that to y'all this way: what's going on in our world? It just, I don't know. Is it even worth pausing and talking about? It just seems like, and you guys see it. You see the messiness. What's going on? What and you guys are, hats off. You're in the middle of it, and thank you for what you're doing, but you need more help.
Absolutely. We definitely need more help. And I think that this idea of, well, what do we do with the mess that is our world today? The only thing we can do is try to make it better. If we want to be worth our weight in gold, then we need to probably be helping out our community. And no one grows up hoping that they have their children removed, by CPS. Nobody is, an 8-year-old out on the playground at school going, I sure hope that I grow up and have substance abuse issues. So no one in our community is the goal is that they end up in these places. And so I think CASA is unique in that because we do have to follow laws, but because the law is not what we are concerned with mostly, we are more concerned with best interest. And thank goodness the judges and lawyers are tied to the law, because they get to kind of go, is this legal? Is this something that we should be doing or not doing? But we get to kind of step in and be helpers, be collaborators, to kind of bring a human element to these parents and these children, to go, they're not just a number, they're not just another kid in a system, they're not just, arbitrary, things. They are real human beings that once had dreams and hopes, and they still do. And we get to kind of, we get to kind of engage in that part, which is really unique to be able to do.
And there's a lot of ways to get at it, right? And a lot of ways to talk about it. Again, you guys are in the middle of it. And as I listen to you, I'm thinking about, well, in a legal system that's governed by laws, you have people arguing about the laws all the time.
Right.
If you go to a church, you might experience a church where there's a lot of wonderful people in that church, but they go into a building, shut the doors, and do their own thing, and they can be out of touch.
Right.
they can certainly be accused of being out of touch, even if they don't feel that's a fair
reality.
accusation,
Sure.
but and then you can have parachurch or nonprofit organizations or paralegal organizations that are trying to do something, but it seems like you guys cut through all of that and have a little bit of a reach into all of that. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes.
And does the training address that? Okay, you're going to be one part, or ear to the legal system. One ear, you have a lot of ears here. One ear is going to be toward, the needs of the child. That's going to be your most important thing, the best interest. But you're gonna be one ear to a big brother, big sister type or youth group type relationship, but one ear to helping the kid out at school, or there's just a lot going on.
Yeah.
Yes, and we actually have like requirements for the advocate. Every month they have to do X, Y, and Z as far as reaching out to the PCM to engage and reaching out to teachers and the placement.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Jen, because
Right.
I was going to ask about ongoing requirements, because once I'm trained and I'm volunteering, surely there's stuff I have to continue to do. And is there like a yearly refresher or anything like that?
So we do monthly trainings on different topics. We do tours of local agencies that could be good resources for our advocates. And we do just a variety of recommendations for online stuff as well. They have to do 12 hours every year. And it's really kind of self-led as far as what they choose to participate in. They just have to get the 12 hours in, and it's something to do with how to be a better advocate. So, if they have a kiddo that is ADHD and they're using psychotropic ADHD medications, then they may want to go to a training that talks more about that so they can learn so that they're making valid recommendations in their court reports.
What about your next training? When is that happening?
We have a lunch and learn in 2 weeks, but we have a tour of Youth Voice next Tuesday. So we go and tour and just kind of learn about that organization so that we can utilize that resource.
And if somebody wants to find out more, they go to your website?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a section that talks about training. We have a section that talks about resources from what we call Tour de Abilene, which is those specific tours that I was just talking about. We have lots of info on there, and we're kind of working on cleaning it up. So
Yes.
You may have to kind of poke around right now, but it is there.
Yes.
And of course, anytime reaching out to someone on staff, we can definitely point people in the right direction.
Absolutely.
And then in post-production, Travis will put the website down, but what is your website?
BigCountryCasa.org.
So if you go to bigcountrycasa.org, you're going to get all of the info. How do you volunteer, when training is, or how to say, hey, email me, I'm interested, right?
Yes.
Right.
And is that kind of thing confidential at that point? Like I would assume there's some confidentiality even for the volunteers, right? Or is that a wide open public thing? Hey, Joe Schmuckatelli is a volunteer with CASA. Or what would Joe Schmuckatelli experience if he volunteered? He just goes to training, and is he free? I guess what I'm getting at is he free to say on his social media, hey, I'm a CASA volunteer.
Absolutely.
And it's really been fantastic.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, we would share, hey, that guy's a CASA, or something of that nature. Oh, I know him. He's one of our advocates.
Yeah, because
but
it's a
I'm not going to
public
give
thing.
his contact information without, checking.
And obviously, the children that are in care, they have a right to their own personal, identifying things. And so they oftentimes don't want everyone in the world knowing, hey, I'm in foster care. I've experienced abuse and neglect, those kinds of things. And so when a CASA is assigned a case, although they may be able to say, I'm a CASA, if they're doing things with their CASA kiddo, or if they're those kinds of things, their identity is confidential. And so it's more of, this is my friend, or I'm so-and-so's mentor, or something around those lines. This is someone I volunteer with.
And all of that's discussed in training.
Absolutely.
You don't have to, I guess what I'm saying is you don't have to worry about things like that.
Right.
You might have questions, but you're going to figure it all out.
Yes.
And you're going to be trained by professionals like Jen Lemke,
Like Jen.
for example. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to get all that hand it to you.
Yes. And I always tell them also, just because you get sworn in, you're official, doesn't mean that I disappear. I'm still here. I may not know how to find answers to your questions, but I know how to ask around and point you in the right direction. I always want to be a support. I always say there's 12 of us. We're here to support y'all. We cannot do our mission without our advocates.
Right.
Like it's in the standards. We have to have volunteers serving these kiddos. So
Is it worth it? Is it worth it?
yes, absolutely.
You have people who come back and say, wow, this whole thing has really been beneficial.
Absolutely.
I think it is a difficult situation to be in because you're really seeing the worst of the worst in these people's lives. And so I do think that it's hard and you're seeing kind of the worst parts of our community and you're kind of hearing the worst stories. And so I think it is difficult to see the forest for the trees sometimes. But at the end of the day, the work that we're doing with these families and these kiddos, we're hoping ends in rehabbed families. We're hoping it ends in healthier citizens. We're hoping it ends in
building bigger support networks for these kiddos that need it.
Absolutely. Because that's really, at the end of the day, what CASA wants to do is we want to be that collaborator, that person that gets our hands dirty in every little, spot, but that when the case is over and we remove ourselves, that network of support's still there for that family. We want to be out of their life at some point, and we want them to be able to function beautifully without us.
And on the same token, being out of their life sometimes, doesn't look the same way as you would think.
Right.
Sometimes it's, I'm no longer your CASA, but I still, may
Interact.
come to your baby shower or, something way down the road. We've definitely had stories where CASAs have created a relationship that means there's a kiddo that may have asked the judge for permission to marry or, silly little things like that. And it's all been fostered by that CASA connection.
Mm-hmm.
So
for sure.
Yeah, and going back to where we started, that was a story from a long time ago, the 911 call that still makes you emotional, and thinking about how difficult it was for that 6-year-old to describe what's going on to a 911 operator. But, and you probably don't know what the outcome was there, but what you would hope, and your intent is that the outcome is a better situation for everybody involved.
Absolutely.
That's the goal.
Right. That we're doing some training with stepdad. We're making sure that he recognizes the way that he reacted was inappropriate. We're doing some maybe even encouragement of checking out, psych evals and things like that, making sure that is the body chemistry of this person even promoting good thoughts and are they able to kind of focus on doing the right thing. I think it's really important that we recognize how multifaceted everyone is in this situation, and how you can't just look at one person and say, oh, they're bad or they're good. Everyone is some version of both, and we have to kind of hope that they can get better, because, if we don't, where are we at?
And so, Jen, your job is to help people who want to be involved accomplish all of that as effectively as possible.
Right.
That's what training does.
That is, it lays the solid foundation for that. I think it's kind of a little bit of a learn as you go.
Right.
I'm always there to help gather additional resources, and so are their supervisors. So supervisors do provide an element of training. I do the official training, but I think, our 12 employees definitely all do some degree of training.
And although every case is different, and the situations surrounding that is different, but we have a wealth of knowledge on our staff of people who've experienced lots of different things. And the things that we have not experienced, we are underneath Texas CASA, and there's a wealth of knowledge there. And then that's underneath National CASA. And so there's always someone that can kind of answer a question. We can find someone who's dealt with something similar. And like I said, every case is different. Every situation you kind of find yourself in might be different, but there's similarities, and we can figure out how to help.
Love it. And in a world where there's people who just talk blah blah blah, you guys are doing it. You're really involved. And if somebody wants to do it, get really involved. They ought to come see you.
We're here.
Yeah, please.
We're here.
Jen, so good to see you and visit with you and have you on the podcast. Dana, good to see you and have you on the podcast again.
Yes.
Wow. You guys are winners. And you're a winner for joining us here on Abilene People. I want to give a shout out to our ace producer, Travis Corrigan, for making everything work. And I want to thank you and tell you that we're going to have another podcast real soon with another interesting person. But tough to beat these two interesting people.
We're pretty great.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
And humble, too. I love it.
Super humble.
I love it. All right. We'll see you next time here on Abilene People. I'm your host, Danny Sims. Thank you for joining